you've talked about a number of problems. Do you believe that these were done intentionally, unintentionally? Was it done because it was for partisan reasons, or was it done because of, for lack of a better word, incompetence, because they only do this once every 2 and 4 years?
I think it was planned sabotage, because there's no way these machines, these tabulators and the printers could be certified the night before and then malfunction right on election day, when the vast majority of the voters on that day were Republican voters. Only 17% based upon exit polls were Democrats on that day. So I think it was planned. It was too coincidental for it to just have all the settings wrong at the same exact time. I've never seen anything like that. In my 40 years of volunteering in elections, I've never seen anything so chaotic in my life.
Did it appear to you that the people that were running that precinct, that voting station, that they were partisans, that they knew what they were doing?
I think the people working at the poll were honorable people and good people. I think it was the way it was set up by the higher ups, that they didn't have any jurisdiction over the settings on the machines. That is done by the county itself, by the Board of Supervisors staff. The people working there are just citizens who are volunteering and pretty much bipartisan. But they didn't have any control over setting the settings and the other criteria that they were forced to follow.
What was your opinion of, you thought that there was commingling of ballots?
Correct.
By mistake, on purpose? What was your thought when you saw that happen? And what exactly, explain what you saw it happen.
Well, the first batch was already in the black canvas bag.
First batch of what?
The door 3 ballots that had overflowed. Those were untabulated, uncounted ballots that the voters were told they would be counted later. They were already in the bag. So when they took out the counted ballots that had gone through the tabulators and put them right on top of those, that immediately commingled at least some of them. More importantly though, the door 3 ballots, I never saw the rest of them, and there was a lot, being segregated and further packaged up. Either they didn't open those doors and accidentally left them in the ballot boxes, or they opened it up when they dumped all the others onto the floor, and that divider came out at the same time and they all got commingled. So at least it was either some or all were commingled.
If this was mostly a conservative or Republican precinct and they put in votes that had already been counted, would that not have been a benefit to the Republicans?
No, I think ultimately they claim that they did count those ultimately down at the tabulation center and sorted through them all. But we would need to see proof of that, because there was so much chaos and there were people leaving line. That's the key thing. They had children. We had elderly people and walkers. Some people said they had to work the next day and they just left. And I was only out there on 2 occasions, short amount of time, and I observed people leaving, giving up on voting.
How many people would you say did not get a chance to vote? Were people turned away, or did everybody get to go through and vote?
Well, everybody that wanted to stay and got there before 7, in fact, that one gentleman was the last one. He was there till 9:30 voting. They could have stayed. But a lot of these people were in work clothes. They've worked all day. They got there plenty early, they thought. And then the wait was an hour and a half. And then once you're inside, that process could take another half hour easily. And then if it rejected your vote, that might be another half hour. So it was very onerous. And some of these people had small children with them. Those were the ones that gave up earliest.
Have you ever worked polling places like this before?
I have on some occasions in a peripheral fashion, I have. But I've never seen an election like this, ever.
I was going to say, have you seen lines like this, or what was different than what you've seen before?
I've never seen lines like this, but I've also never seen so much malfeasance of different types all at the same time.
Is this because the Democrats are winning? Your concern?
No, I would say this is just unfair to whoever came out to vote on election day. And It was when tabulators don't work, and there's a little bit of suspicion with these tabulators anyway. We're told we voted, but do we really know what's been tabulated? It's in a computer. So when you add on top of that malfunctioning printers, but then they say the printers are the problem, but then they say the printers are fixed, but then the tabulators still aren't working hours later. In fact, those tabulators at that voting center didn't work from the first time they opened in the morning at 6 a.m. till that night. They never worked all day. And and when they did work, it was sporadic.
So you were a poll watcher.
I was a poll observer.
Okay.
That's what the technique. And I'm partisan, a Republican poll observer.
So as a poll observer,
yes.
Who are you able to tell these complaints to, and what were they able to do?
One person, the inspector. And she seemed like she was trying to do her job, though she would not give a lot of info. She was overwhelmed. They were all overwhelmed. And the people, it was a rough process for the voters. The ones that stayed there, it was a real sacrifice. It was hard. It was wearing. There was high temperature there. Tempers flaring. The police were called twice, as I mentioned. It was a tough deal. It was not a pleasant experience. It disturbed me to the point I could not sleep that night. And it was very disturbing. No one should have to go through that. It's easy to say, why didn't they vote by mail or do some other method? But you know what? It's election day. I've been a voting citizen for 40 years. I could always vote on election day and have the results that night. I've never personally been subjected to what those people had to go through, waiting in line, having things malfunction repeatedly, and just the lack of confidence that my vote was even going to be counted if I was in the midst of that. I would say most of those people were treated very shabbily. It was third world level functioning.
So are you confident all the votes were counted properly?
Not at all. Not at all. I do not. And that's beyond just my experience in the observation of the physical counting. It just doesn't make sense. You could just tell most of these people, either they're going to vote straight ticket or they're not going to vote. I don't think people jumped all over their ballot like they're trying to show us in these results. It makes no sense. It makes no sense logically, but after observing what I observed, I think this thing was very manipulated. It was planned sabotage to disrupt it, to add another layer of don't look at the machines, don't look at these oddities that are happening. Look over here while we do something over here. And I think it was at the least extremely mismanaged and at the most very nefarious.
So are you an election denier because you didn't get the results you wanted?
No, that's not, I wouldn't describe myself that way. I like fairness. I like a level playing field. I think I would stand up no matter what after observing what I observed. It wasn't fair. A lot of these people with little children trying to vote, I've never seen so many people trying to exercise their franchise and being put through a discomfort. And these people have to feed their children. They have to go to work the next day. There was people there in their work outfits, welders, and you could tell these guys were tradesmen. Their hands were dirty. Standing in line at the end of a long day and then being treated shabbily. The poll workers were polite and kind, but the system itself was oppressive.
All right, if you were Secretary of State and you could do whatever, what would you do now?
I'd say there needs to be a revote and they need to be hand counted.
Do an entire new election?
Yes.
For all races or just the governors, just the Senate?
I'd say all races. It's not fair to anybody. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. The results were very mixed and very odd statistically anyway. That's beyond my purview. But what I saw just at one voting center in a 3-hour period, it left me shaken. And my view of elections now is forever tainted. This was chaotic, and if this happened at 70 different centers, it changed the election.